You don't have it. Do you have it? Yeah, okay. If anyone doesn't have it, we have it here. Okay. So we learned what is Chesed shebechesed, Gvura shebechesed, Tiferes shebechesed, Netzach shebechesed, Hoid shebechesed. Then we came to Yisoid shebechesed. And when you said Yisoid, it means it's kashrus, the connection. The connection between the one who's giving and the one who's receiving. So basically what that means is that when you are involved with someone else, there's different levels of how connected you are. Like sometimes it's something that you're involved in when it's chesed. Let's say, I love this work. I love this project. I love this person. So because of that, I'm going to give something to this person, or I'm going to invest in this project, or whatever it is that I'm going to do, be involved. So that involvement has to do with also the degree of his kashrus. His kashrus means to what extent am I connected to it? Let me give something which is an extreme, and then from there we can understand that there are also milder levels. Like sometimes a person is involved in something to the degree that they're obsessed with it. They think about it or think about this person day and night when they're eating, when they're sleeping, when they're working. This thing is on their mind and they have to do this and this thing, or they want to do, or they enjoy doing this and this thing. So that means that they're connected to it, that they're so into it that they can't stop thinking about it. That's a very strong degree of kashrus. So let's say a yid, if we talk about Yisoid in a positive way, it means there's someone that I want to help, a person that I love, and therefore I want to help them. I want to give them something. And it means so much to me that I'm so connected to it that I'm totally immersed in it and totally obsessed with it. And that sort of obsession, that connection is what his kashrus means. Yep.
Is this one instead of Gevura or Chesed?
The Yesod? So actually, guess what? Neither. The spheres are also, right, the spheres are also broken up into three. The right, the left, the middle. So when it's Chochma is the right, Bina is the left, and Das is the middle. Next, Chesed is the right, Gevura is the left, Tiferes is the middle. Next, Netzach is the right, Hod is the left, and Yesod is the middle. Because Yesod is not really positive or negative. Whatever attribute I have, and whatever it is, I'm connecting to that which I'm supposed to be giving to. Again, emotion is always about my connection. One way or another, it's something outside of myself. Either I'm connected in a way that I'm going for it, I'm pursuing it, or connecting in a way that I'm moving away from it. So the yesod is how much I'm involved and immersed and connected to that, whatever it is outside of me. Okay, so now we will turn the page. No, Malchus Shebechesed. Okay, we said Malchus Shebechesed is when it comes to full circle, comes to fruition, which is either speaking words of love to the person that I love or doing something which is an act of love. Kol Sheva Hamidus, now the last line on this page, all these 7 character traits, Mashlimis as Midas HaChesed, they complete the general structure of Chesed. They're all details of how Chesed manifests Chesed. The Kach Gam Sheish Hamidus Shel Musam, same with the other 6 midas. What makes them complete and when is the complete structure there when it's Sheva Hamidas Shabahem with all the other 7 midos included in them. Kavura, Tiferes, Netzach, Yisod Malchus. Page 158 is a kitzur, is a summary. It's interesting that the Friedrich Rebbe made a point of whenever he wrote a Mamar, at least most of the Maimarim, a lot of the Maimarim, that at the end he would write a summary. And I think it's something very important, teaches us when you study, at the end, write a summary, which means take out the main points, and that brings clarity in your mind. But it also is something very interesting. When you look at the Friedrich Rebbe's summary, it helps you understand better what was really the point of the Mamar. In other words, sometimes look at the summary and wonder, is that the summary? I thought it talks about something else. Then you look again and you realize, oh, wow, I really missed the point. So here's the kitzur, page 158. Mevayer, sha'omehu mis'orim lachem yubashim bo'esh. It explains that the omer, this carbon omer, is made out of barley that's damp, and you have to dry it up with a fire, make it dry. Lachem again, after that, you take isarin, a certain measurement, shemenapa, and you sift it through to make it more pure, with shleish esrei napis, 13 siftings. After that, after you bring this carbon, lachar kravasemi yesh lisper esheva hamidus. After that, what follows is the counting of the 7 midas in the 7 weeks. Kol mida b'shleimusa, and now he describes every mida, how it's in its complete structure. Chesed is Abba. Chesed Sheva Chesed is Abba Gluya, open love. In other words, I have the emotion of love, and how does it manifest openly? Through love. Gvura Sheva Chesed is the Mida is love, but how does it manifest? Through Gvura. Lisnoi es hasoyne shaleva, to hate the one that hates, the one that you love. Of course, you're not supposed to hate a person. So if we were talking about hate, first of all, it doesn't mean what you're allowed or not allowed to do. We're just describing an emotional character trait. But of course, if we talk about Hashem, it's more about hating Klippa. Like it says in Tanya, a tzaddik hates Klippa, not the person, but the Klippa, he hates it with the ultimate hate because it opposes Hashem, whom he loves. Tiferes Shebechesed is a chesed lechazik ruchnius. That's when I have this love and the balance that I have and the merging of the different energies that I have is for ruchnius, meaning when it has a purpose and has an advantage to it, not like we said chas v'shalom, you could sometimes do it in a negative way. Is the right kind of balance. Netzach shebechesed means I'm determined to carry out what I want to because of my love. Don't take in consideration any kind of failure or any kind of blockage, anything blocking me, anything standing in the way. Don't let it stop me. Like Avraham Avinu was on the way to the Akedah, and Hashem had the Satan create a river, and then he created rocks and created other things, and he didn't stop, he just went straight forward. That's Netzach Shebechesed. I made up my mind I'm going to do this, and nothing's going to stop me. Hoyt Shebechesed is Lilchem L'manatzolos Ohev, to fight, to save the person that I love. So the reason why it's Hoyt Shebechesed, the same idea, is determination, but in a different mode, in the mode of I'm risking myself. In other words, I'm not allowing myself to be stopped because of I love myself and I don't want to get hurt. So I'm going out of my way in order to save this other person, and I'm holding back those feelings that I would like to be concerned about myself more. So if it's a holding back kind of thing, it's determination in Gevura, it's Hoid. If it's determination in Chesed, then it's Netzach. Let's say, give me another example, maybe a little bit more practical. Let's say respect. Respect is Chesed or Gevura? Usually you have two opinions. Everybody's saying the same thing. Okay, must be right. So respect is Gevura, because when you respect someone, you back off. What does it say in the Shulchan Aruch? If you respect a parent or respect a teacher of Torah, you don't interrupt them when they're speaking, you don't sit in their seat, you don't call them by their first name. In other words, respect is something which is expressed through moving back out of respect. So in this case, what if a person out of respect should not say something? But it's hard because I really want to make a comment. I really want to give criticism, and you're not supposed to because of respect. So when I'm determined to not let myself do it, that's the same thing as netza, but it's in the reverse mode in not doing something. That's hod shebechesed. In other words, because of my chesed, let's say in this case, let's say the love leads me to respecting this person, and the respect is something which I have to be determined to act that way, even if I have a desire to overstep my boundaries. Yisoid shebechesed is this kashrus in ma'ohed, the bond with the person that I love. And that bond is what leads to the next level, which is when I finally act on it. Malchus shebechesed, hadiburim shel cheva, speaking words of love. So we know that Malchus in Sefirat, and also when we talk about Hashem, alludes to Hashem's speech. How did Hashem create the world? With speech. He said, let there be this, let there be that. And in terms of spheres, with which spirit did Hashem create the world? With Malchus. In fact, we say this in davening every day. Malchuscha, Malchus, Kol Elamim. Your Malchus is the Malchus and the source of all the worlds. So that's Sefirat HaMalchus. I don't know if you ever had a class on this, like what's the connection between Malchus and speech? Malchus means royalty. Speech means talking. It sounds like there's like two unrelated subjects completely. The classical answer for that question is that a king rules with speech. In other words, there's an expression in Gemara, Omar Malka, Okar Tura. The king speaks and a mountain gets uprooted, which means a king doesn't go around doing things. He just says, I want this road cleared. Road gets cleared. I want this house flattened out. The house gets flattened out. I want to see this person in my chamber. The person ends up in his chamber, which means he rules through speech. So Malchus and a king and Malchus go together. That's, I guess, one explanation on a certain superficial level. And on a deeper level, it's because a king and the relationship between the king is all about how the king relates to the people. There's much more to the king than what is involved with his relationship with the people. Let's say David HaMelech. David HaMelech was a tzaddik gomer. He wrote the Tehillim. He's the one who his Tehillim, Yidden, from the time that he wrote it, the whole Jewish nation lives of that. I mean, part of the Torah is written by this person. You're talking about someone on a very, very high level spiritually we can't even describe. And yet he was a king, which means he related to people. So the relationship to people was, in a sense, the most external part of himself. David HaMelech himself was more about his personal relation with Hashem and his relationship with internal things, with himself. The relationship with the people, that is like the most external part of him, relates to people. And the same is with us. When I speak to someone, that's not me. The me is what's going on inside me. Speaking is just how I'm relating to things outside of myself. Or the same with action. Action is when I'm going to have some sort of an influence on something outside of myself. I build a table, I go and buy something. And the same is with Hashem. The sphere of Malchus is always there representing either speech or action. Okay, we got some idea. We're going to go through another whole list of the spheres again in a different context, but we'll do it again and a third time, and hopefully it'll become more clear what the whole thing is all about. Gimel, this is page 158. Kol hamidas and midas b'nei adam. All the midas that we just mentioned are the midas of people, not animals, but humans. La'adam yesh seichel midas. Every person has intellect and has character traits, emotion. Shebezehu's shoynim mibalachayim. And in that way, a person is different. That is what distinguishes humans from animals. It's mainly the fact that they have seichel, intellect. And by the way, even midas, animals have intellect and animals have emotion. There are two basic differences between the intellect and emotion of a human and the intellect and emotion of an animal. Ha'adam ikrei seichel. A man, a human being, is mainly defined by his intellect. If he's a human being the way he's supposed to be. Unfortunately, there are humans that are like animals. But if he's a human being that deserves the name human being, then he's defined by his intellect. He conducts his life in an intellectual way, in a logical way, in a way that's wise, with wisdom. And midas hemapia seichel. The emotions are guided by the intellect. Balachayim, but animals, ikra midas, they're primarily defined by their emotions, by the way they feel. Vaseichel urak mashishayich lemidas, and the intellect is just there to serve the midas. Gam haseichel v'amidas shel bnei adam, him lo yosem Hashem sichliim. With humans, it's not just an instinct, it's intellectual, which is higher than just instinct, which is a natural thing. But with humans, there's another dimension. There's godly intellect, and that's a third dimension. So there's basically animals, which is natural, and then there's intellect, and then there's godly intellect, and that's the nefesh elokis. The seichel umidas olokim, the godly intellect and the godly emotion, yesh koyach eloki, that has a godly power, shemiyuid lahashpia, ala seichel v'amidas hativim. It has the power to control and to influence the natural midas. Shema seichel v'amidas shnefesh habamas v'yitzahara. Let me just say that in simple words. That means there's three sets of seichel amidas. One set is the natural. By the way, we had this in a Mamar early in the year, you might remember. One set is the natural intellect and emotion, which is no different than an animal. The other set is intellectual intellect and emotion. And the third set is godly intellect and emotion. So the godly intellect and emotion is so far removed from the natural, the nefesh habahamis and the Yitzhahara, that it can't really influence it. So think of it this way. Imagine a person is speaking, but in a language that no one understands. So there's an interpreter. He speaks in his language. The interpreter explains it in a language that everyone can understand, and then everyone understands it. Now, let me add to this. In the times of Gemara, there was also someone who was called an interpreter, but not an interpreter because they spoke a different language. And Chassidus usually brings this in as a mashal, that the Tana who spoke words of Torah was so deep that the people couldn't understand him. So there was another person that did understand him, and he would repeat what the Tana said and sort of rephrase it, paraphrase it, and speak in a language that the other people could relate to. So you have two ends of the spectrum. One is the teacher that's very high up there. The other is the student that's very far away. Then you have another great sage that's in the middle. He's not as great as the teacher, otherwise they wouldn't understand him either. He's not as simple as the people, otherwise he wouldn't understand the teacher. So he's somewhere in between. He's a bridge. He's great enough to understand the teacher, and he's also not that great, so he can relate more to the students and speak in a language that they can understand. Did I just explain myself, or I need an interpreter? Okay, so the nefesh elokis is up here. The Nefesh HaBahamis and the Yetzer Hara is down here. And then in the middle, there's an intellectual soul, and that sort of is the way it operates. The godly soul is the godly ideas to the intellectual soul, focuses it on, and that's eventually how the godly soul could influence the animal soul.
What is the intellectual soul? What do you call it?
So I think I mentioned that sometimes you look in Tanya, you'll actually find it uses this term intellectual soul, which seems to be a contradiction. We always say there's two souls. Does this mean that there are three souls? So the answer to that is no, there are two souls, but like everything else in Chassidus, it's general, then it's broken down to detail, because there are two sets of intellect in a person. There's certain things which are intellect, which they're really part of the emotion. In other words, again, think of the animal. The animal, a dog or a cat, which you're more familiar with. You don't have donkeys and oxen in our backyard. Well, people have dogs and cats. Their life is all emotion. Like, they don't sit and study. They don't do homework. What are they doing all day? They're either eating or sleeping or playing or running or hunting. So they're basically doing things that fulfills their emotional needs. But we see there's seichel. That means that there's the logic and the intellect is just there to serve the emotion. That's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara wants one thing, pleasure. If it's eating, we'll have pleasure through eating, pleasure through playing, pleasure by controlling someone else's life, pleasure by breaking something, pleasure by building something, pleasure. That's all he wants, making a lot of money. And he uses his intellect for that pleasure. So that intellect, even though it's intellect, it's almost like an extension of the emotion. But then there are people that they're not godly, but their life is much more refined than that. People that are intellectual people, or they study math, or they study science, or they study medicine, they're intellectual people. So it's not like an animal, their life is all about just pleasure. They're really deep people, thinking people. It's not godly, but there's intellect there. So that means within us, we all have two dimensions to our own intellect. One is more of an extension of just emotion, and one is, in a sense, intellect in its own right. And then there's a third thing, which is the godly intellect. So the intellect, which is higher, is more of a keli to receive from the godly intellect. It's still very different, and the godly soul has to sort of explain and have to be able to relate to it, that to understand godliness intellectually, but eventually I get it. And once I get it, I can even explain it to the animal soul within me, the Nefesh HaBahamis in me, that the Nefesh HaBahamis should change, because ultimately that's the goal. That instead of that, even that part of me, which is Nefesh HaBahamis, should start deriving pleasure from things that have more meaning and more purpose than just things that are empty pleasure. What would be an example of that? If anyone could think of an example, you're welcome. If not, I'll think of one.
So where does the Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov kind of fall into?
Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov are more dealing more with the. In other words, when we say Yetzer Hara, we're talking about that part of the soul which. That's it. It's always drawing me and attracting me to things that give me pleasure. That's the Yetzer Hara. Its goal is pleasure. And I think in the other Mamar that we had, we actually learned that even that is not purely Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara is when the pleasure starts leading me. Pleasure in itself is not bad, it's just pleasure. But when it starts leading me to do things that are against Torah, that's more the Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara. That the pleasure starts getting formed in a negative direction. In other words, once I'm pursuing pleasure, so today the pleasure is eating food that's kosher, but then tomorrow I see something not kosher and that's pleasurable, I'm going to go for it too. So that's the Yetzer Hara, when it starts leading a person away from violating Torah.
So if you put it in that three sets of soul, it doesn't really fall into it, does it?
What, the Yetzer Hara?
Yeah.
It's part of the animal soul, but it's the lowest part of the animal soul. there is a part of the animal soul that's more intellectual and pure intellectual. I think we can think of it in the process of a person who changes their life, goes to lectures, learns about Yiddishkeit, about Torah, asks questions, has these real heavy fights with the rabbi, the rebbitzin, and eventually they come around. What happened? It means obviously that this rabbi, the rebbitzin, said something to me that made sense. It really resonated. This makes sense. This really registered. And then the result is that I changed the way I live. So initially, Shabbos doesn't make any sense. How can the human beings live that way? To restrict themselves for 24 hours, not do all the things that Shabbos tells us to do. Then you start learning about it and you understand it. And once you understand it, it makes sense to you. Once it makes sense to you, eventually it comes to a point where you actually enjoy it. Or the same with tznius. That before you understand it, you can't understand how people live this way. They're depriving themselves of pleasure in life. And once you understand that, it comes the opposite, that not tznius becomes almost repulsive. So what? My perspective changed. Once my perspective changed, then my action changed. So I guess the way the perspective changes, that the godly soul explains things in a way that my intellect could grasp it. And then the intellect explains it in such a way that even the animal part of me could grasp it. And then I change. Well, I said this many times, that if you walk over to a woman and you would say, you should light Shabbos candles, and says, what's this all about? And you would say, because you're mamshech from Malchus the Atzilus into Bia. Excuse me? You're drawing down the light from Atzilus into Bria Tzir Asiyah. Then eventually it comes down here and makes such a big change. And then you think she's going to light candles after that, or the man is going to put on tefillin, you'll tell him tefillin is mamshik from Chochmah and Bina Batzilus into the Midas. Oh, okay. So that's the language of Nefesh Elokis. But in order for the Nefesh Elokis to speak Nefesh Bahamis, he has to take the concept and translate it in a language and in words that the intellectual part of me, which is not God, relate to. I have to explain it in a way that it can relate to it. And then that goes a step further, that even the animal part, which is purely emotion, should start understanding things of Shabbos. They think of it as something which is inconceivable, like one thing that'll never happen. And once they really understand Shabbos, and especially after a while living with Shabbos, they can't stop thanking Hashem that He gave us this gift of one day a week. Only Hashem in His infinite wisdom could have thought of such an idea like Shabbos. What a difference does it make? And I'd be able to just divorce myself from all those things that go on all week long, and it's truly peaceful. So how did it all change? So it was a process, Nefesh Elokis, Sichlis, and then it reached even the part of me that's just out for pleasure. I realized I thought pleasure was running around all over the place 24/7, and now I found out it's only running around 24/6, not 24/7, and that gives me pleasure. And the same with everything else. There was once a chassid that he said, you know what the term Bali Taiva means? Bali Taiva means people that are obsessed with physical pleasure, all sorts of physical pleasure. It's not a very refined word, and it doesn't really indicate a very refined person. They're just immersed in physical pleasure. That's all they care about. He said, if the Bali Taiva would know the pleasure that you get from learning Chassidus, they throw away all their taivas and run and learn Chassidus all day long. What he meant to say, even from their perspective, that all they want is pleasure, they would do this because this is pleasure. It comes to a point where Nefesh Bahamis has that pleasure. Okay. So now he's going to describe Chesed Shebechesed, Gvura Shebechesed for the Nefesh Bahamis. Now we're going to feel a little bit more at home. We'll understand what he's talking about. Let's see.
The entire first part was all for the Nefesh Elokis, right? And then this is going to
The first part was all in a positive way, yeah. So I guess I really think that the first part was more the Nefesh HaSichlis, the middle soul. Because after this is going to be a third set, explaining all 7 for the Nefesh Elokis. So the first part must have been the middle stone. Chesed hi aba gufnis liyoni olam. Chesed is also love, but Nefesh Bahamas Eitzahara, it's love for physical, materialistic things. Chesed abos b'hatuf tam rachmana litzlan. That is the passion and the good physical pleasure that a person feels. But taivas gufnius, from all these physical, materialistic pleasures, and all these things which are really worldly perspectives that go against the Torah perspective. And that gives the person pleasure more than anything else. That's chesed shebechesed of the Nefesh Bahamas. Gvura shebechesed is the opposite. Because he loves all these physical pleasures, and there are people who keep Torah mitzvahs, and they declare that this is nonsense and this is foolishness. That's not where you should be spending your time and your energy. So hasinah is hate the shema Torah mitzvahs. Like we know throughout the years. I mean, of course, you have people who are just not religious and they don't care. They're just complacent about everything else. And then there are people like in Russia, the Jewish communists and others, or the Enlightenment movement, that they literally hated from Torah mitzvahs Jews. Try to imagine this, that when the Tsar came out with a decree that little children should be going to the army, which means a mother and a father wouldn't see their child for the next 25 years, they're going to be in the hands of an army. You can imagine the feeling. There were Jews who were from the Enlightenment movement that they went around kidnapping Jewish kids to bring them to the Tsar. That means that they had such hate for people that are keeping Torah mitzvahs. Why do they have the hate? Because it goes against the way they want to live. So as long as there's a voice out there that's disqualifying my way of life, they hate it because they love the way of life that they live. Tiferet shebechesed, ki hillel Rasha al taivas nafshi. The Russia prides himself with his taivas. There's one thing that a person has a taiva, and he's very materialistic, and he's embarrassed. He doesn't want people to know all the unrefined things that he does. We have, and we see this in the world today, that people actually are proud and they try to announce and proclaim translation word to found pride. And pride yourself. Obviously, there must be a translation of harmony and all that. He doesn't go into this over here. Netzach shebechesed is that not only he himself loves all these he knows his creator and he intentionally wants to rebel against him. He does things which is heresy. Over Averis does and violates all kinds of Averis. Not only because of pleasure, sometimes people do Averis, they're not in essence bad or evil, they're just overcome and they're obsessed with their physical pleasures, and therefore they become insensitive to spirituality. No, here is a person who he does it intentionally because he wants to undermine Yiddishkeit. And that's Hoid Shebechesed. So his love to the materialistic pleasure leads him to such, of course, these are extremes, and there must be examples of something which is milder. And then Malchus Shebechesed is again when it comes to that this Maimon was said in the 1940s. In the 1940s, this was during World War II. So first of all, there was the Nazis, there was communism, and in communism itself, there was the Jewish communists, which is a perfect description, unfortunately, of these people. Malchus Shebechesed is ribu diburim asurim b'chlal. When a person, as a result of where they're at, they speak words that are inappropriate. Dibur kfir b'frat, specifically words that are heresy. They deny the truth of Torah. They laugh at mitzvahs. They laugh about it in speech. They write articles. They print books, like the Enlightenment movement. They printed books making fun of Jewish way of life. And unfortunately, through doing that, they inspired, we can use that word, many people to drop Yiddishkeit, to drop Torah mitzvahs, because they were making fun of it. And that's how they were able to bring so many people to follow them. They make this world into a much more coarse world. I hate that this is the exact opposite of why Hashem created the world and created the Jewish nation. We were created that mitzvahs, by learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, will make the world more refined. And that comes out the Ashpaz HaSeichel V'Amidas Elikim Shel Nefesh Elikis. That happens through the Nefesh Elikis. And now he's going to describe the 10 midas, the 7 midas of the godly soul. Let's first digest this, and tomorrow we'll do the 7 midas of the godly soul. To be continued. What?
I didn't get the last part.
I can hear you.
I didn't get the last part.
The last part. With the one which is Malchus of the Chesed? No,